Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to a review of the T40, the non-turreted Tier 4 American tank destroyer. So just to give you a broad overview of what you should expect from this thing, this is a very good machine with a wide gun traverse. It's slightly asymmetric, as you can see from the asymmetrical hull, but it's got a wide gun traverse. There's a genuine selection of guns to use on it, both of which are good and suit different playstyles. It has some armour, though not an amazing amount, and an excellent view range. This is a fantastic machine. So let me just get that out there before moving on. So, what you have is a it's a tank destroyer based on the hull of the M3 Lee. Now don't let that fill you full of dread. The M3 Lee may not be the best tier 4 tank in the world, but this thing is actually pretty good. The armour is okay, I'll talk more about that later. But because it's based on the chassis of the M3 Lee, then compared to some of the other tier 4 tank destroyers, this is actually quite a large machine. One thing that is worth pointing out is that it has a badass 400 meter view range, which is phenomenal and you can abuse mercilessly. Now, I'm not going to go through all these stats in great detail. I mean, it's a tier 4 tank destroyer, you don't get a huge amount of health, although 275 isn't too shabby, but don't expect to take huge numbers of hits. What this is really defined by is the awesome view range. 615 meter signal range doesn't define this tank, but it is still very good. And the gun selection. So let's talk about that gun selection. Now there's a whole plethora of guns you can have for this. You know, 75mm howitzer, well this is basically the gun from the T18 tank destroyer at tier 2. 3-inch anti-tank gun, you'll probably never use this, you might have used it on another machine in the TD line, but let's not worry about it because realistically this tank only has 3 guns. Here is the 57mm gun, which you can unlock at tier 3 on the T82. Here is the 105mm gun, which you can unlock at tier 3 on the T18. And here is the M1A1 gun, the 76mm gun, which is a gun that you won't already have unlocked on this tank line. And what do you get with each of them? Well, these two are, you face the same choice as you did at tier 3. You can either go with a fairly rapid firing, comparatively accurate gun with a very good aim time, respectable penetration and okay damage, and a very good rate of fire in the 57mm gun, or go for the 105mm howitzer, which gets a choice between high explosive or high explosive anti-tank ammo. It's not very accurate, but it really can wreck people's faces and one-shot people. Now, if you liked using the 57mm gun, then you will probably like to upgrade to this 76mm gun, and if you preferred using the 105, you're probably going to stay using the 105 on the T40. It's not quite as outright destructive at tier 4 as it was at tier 3, but this is still a 105mm gun at tier 4. It's going to wreck people's faces. And it's a matter of perspective, a matter of, you know, what you want. So this 57mm gun is only ever going to be a gun that you grind through, really. But for a gun that you're going to grind through, it's not too bad. I mean, it's a 6-pounder gun basically, 57mm, 110 pen, 180 with APCR, you know, premium ammunition. The high explosive ammunition is not very good, so don't bother with it. 75 average damage, 0.39 dispersion at 100 meters, which isn't terrible. 1.7 second aim time, which is good. 26 rounds a minute, which is brilliant. This is a DPM gun, and it's not a bad gun. It's not a bad gun to be grinding other guns with, but it is a grinding gun. You will want to use the 76mm once you have it unlocked. Let's put the howitzer to one side because this is a howitzer. You know, it's the same deal that you got at the T82, just slightly buffed. If you like using the howitzer, you'll like using the howitzer, and you'll know pretty much what you're getting. 410 average damage with high explosive, but only 53 pen. So if you penetrate your shots, you're going to one-shot tier 4 tanks, you're going to one-shot a lot of tier 5 tanks. And you're going to hurt tier 6 tanks. 350 average damage with heat ammo, high explosive anti-tank, and then the pen goes up to 101, but of course bear in mind if you don't penetrate with that you will bounce, whereas if you don't penetrate with the high explosive you'll still do some damage. So just choose whichever you want. But in my opinion, if you're using the howitzer on this tank, I don't think you're really using its view range to its best. So I don't necessarily recommend the howitzers, but I'm biased, I'm not a huge fan of howitzers. If you want to use them, go ahead and use them, but I'm not going to really talk about them much. This is, in my opinion, the moneymaker gun. 76mm anti-tank gun M1A1. Now, this is the tank destroyer version of the gun that you get on the Sherman, the top gun on the Sherman. 76mm, 16.22 rounds per minute, which is very good. 128 pen, 115 average damage. That goes to 177 pen with APCR, so premium ammunition, and 110 average damage. And the high explosive is not completely unusable, sorry. 75mm HE at tier 4 is not too bad. So you can carry a few rounds of that. The accuracy is not brilliant, 0.41 dispersion at 100 meters is not fantastic, but good aim time. And with the rate of fire, you basically just keep slinging shells at the target until the enemy dies. And it's a good little gun, and with it, I think you really can take advantage of that 400 meter view range. The one thing I would note with this gun is that the shell travel time is quite bad. The gun is a little derpy. It takes the rounds quite a long time to get to the target if you're shooting from some distance, which can be a problem if you're trying to lead your shot. Anyway, so that's the gun selection. What about the grind? Well, let's just flip back to earlier on in the grind for that. T18 is not a grind at all. This is one of the most horrifically overpowered machines in the game. This is easy. Many people keep hold of it. I sold mine, but many people keep it. T82 is yet another example of an overpowered American tank destroyer, simply because it can mount this ridiculous 105mm gun. This is the same 105mm gun you have access to on the T40, but on the T40 it is better. It gets a better rate of fire primarily. Might also get a slightly better aiming time. But yeah, this is not a grind either. I didn't actually like this machine, but you know, that's just me, I'm weird. T40. What will you already have unlocked? Well, if you've already gone down to the M3 Lee on the medium line, you will already have the top engine. If you haven't, you won't. If you have played... oh no, sod it. You've played the T82 at tier 3, so you'll have the top radio unlocked. In terms of guns, this 3-inch gun is unique to this tank, but you have to grind through it to move on, even though in my opinion you're probably never going to use it. I don't think it's a particularly good gun, but there we go. This is the 75mm howitzer you used on the T18 at tier 2, and it's the stock gun on this, but you'll never have to use it, as I mentioned earlier on, because you'll already have these two guns unlocked. I used the 57mm, and then ground out the XP to eventually get the M1A1 76mm. But you may want to use the howitzer and continue using it, and that's fine. This is not a particularly painful grind. It's basically unlock the engine, tracks, and 2 guns, and then the Wolverine at tier 5. It's not a particularly painful grind at all. And it shouldn't cause you any particular problems. And when you have done that, you have a very, very, very capable tier 4 tank destroyer. So hopefully I've given you a feel. Oh no, actually, before I move on, sorry, 2 quick things: crew skills and equipment. So crew skills, pretty standard. 6th sense on your commander if you're going to keep this tank. 6th sense on your commander, camo on everyone else for your first skills, and then move on to whatever you want, whether it be brothers in arms or whatever. First aid kit, good idea. Repair kit, yeah. Fire extinguisher, you might want to drop this. I don't remember it ever catching fire. Up to you. Equipment, right. First thing you'll note, this is an open top vehicle, so you cannot use vents. So, what should you use? Well, in my opinion, I say you want some sort of equipment to improve your view range and take even more advantage of this. You could choose optics. I went for binocular telescopes. This has a wide gun traverse, so I think binos let you make the most of this. So I would choose binocular telescopes. I would choose a gun rammer, more DPM. This thing has hilarious DPM with the 76mm gun anyway, but you can't go far wrong with a gun rammer. Gun laying drive is kind of a waste of time, you have a very good aim time anyway. You could go for coated optics as well as binocular telescopes to really squeeze your view range out. That would be an interesting idea. Spall liner, waste of time. Coils, wouldn't bother. Wet ammo rack, no. Camo net, you could do. So basically I would say gun rammer, binocular telescopes, and then either your choice of coated optics or camo net. That would be my advice for equipment on this tank. Right, having said all that, let's go and have a quick look at the armour values. Okay, so I guess that means it's time to have a wee look at the armour. There we go. So, there's not a huge amount to talk about here, but there's a couple of points worth bringing up. Let's start at the back, unconventionally. So, at the back, most of this is 38mm, which is not really going to stop anything, let's be honest. I mean, if it hits at a funky angle, some lower caliber guns might bounce, but it's really not gonna stop anything. This surface is paper, things will just go straight through it. Back here, where it's a very similar story, 38mm isn't really going to stop a great deal of much. Sides, again, are all 38, this really isn't going to stop anything. The only place it becomes slightly more interesting is from the front. So you still have this section of 38mm sweeping around from the sides, but now, because you've got a bit of angling going on it, it means that this section, which corresponds to this section, has effectively 50mm of armour, give or take. And if you go around here, it's actually an auto bounce zone. So you can get bounces from there. The bottom here is 51mm, so the lower plate, in inverted commas, is actually pretty strong. And this is the same armour values that you get on the M3 Lee, because this is based on the M3 Lee. And at tier 4, the M3 Lee doesn't have terrible armour, so that armour's not too bad. What about the downside from the front? Well, there is some downside from the front. This is only 19. This will be penetrated by pretty much everybody easily, and right around the gun is actually 0. So, this bit of armour here does not actually count as armour. Things will just go straight through there. HE will just wreck it. And of course this is open top, so high explosive artillery is going to really ruin this thing's day. But it does get a good view range. So, I mean, it's not particularly a well-armoured machine, but you can get some bounces. Just don't rely on your armour, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In terms of the soft stats, well, I could bring them up and go through them in detail, but I'm not going to because I think it will just bore you senseless. What I will just say is that the mobility is fairly respectable. The soft stats don't hinder it too much, and you get 10 degrees of gun depression and a very wide gun traverse arc, which you'll hopefully see in the replays. Speaking of which, let's get on with them. Here we are with game number 1, and you can see that we are top tier and we're here on Swamp. I am sorry, it's a regular game because it's Swamp, you don't get anything else. I'm platooned up with Loki in her M37 tier 4 American artillery piece, and we've done a few platoons, and we've found that her driving an artillery piece and me driving a tank destroyer is quite a fun combination. So that's what we've done several times. And here is one such game. Now you can see the wide gun traverse arc. It's slightly asymmetrical, but wide gun traverse arc on this tank. And I'm using the M1A1 76mm gun. I don't really like the howitzer on this tank. I mean, as a general rule, I'm not a fan of howitzers. And initially, I'm trying to find a position from which I can get some respectable shots onto people, and I'm thinking of coming up onto this little ridge to try and shoot down on people, but I noticed that the top end of the map is completely devoid of any presence from our team. So I relocate to nearby that windmill and sort of farmhouse area on the hill at the back. Yes, it's the classical camping position. Yes, it's very predictable that someone will be there, but this is a low tier game, so they may or may not have thought of that. And, well, we need somebody covering that side of the map. Oh, I think we do anyway. And Loki is currently still down near the spawn, which, considering the spread of our team, is not a terrible idea. I'm trying to get behind something suitably concealy. That will give me a buff to my camo rating. And you can see there, while we're here, that Loki in the M37 is always letting people know what target she's shooting at, so that they're aware. And it also means that they know that their artillery is doing something. Our Chihi is complaining at someone being a gold noob. I don't really see why he thinks it's important. A Chihi is not hard to penetrate at the best of times. That was a little bit risky. I could have thrown a track or actually damaged my tank doing that. So that was, with hindsight, a bit of a silly thing to do. And Loki's trying to work over the Valentine on the enemy team. The enemy team actually has two Valentines, the British and the Russian one. The Russian being the Valentine 2. And so now I relocate, having gotten bored, and like half the game being over, relocate to this ridge to finally try and actually achieve something in this tank. And, oh, there's the Valentine 2.
Enemy armor is damaged.
And you can see this gun has a very nice reload, and the Chihi polishes the Valentine off. If that T28 pokes out, I can make a horrible mess of him. But he doesn't seem massively interested in doing so. Now at some point Loki has already picked up one kill, which is nice. And you're seeing here, among other things, the respectable mobility of this thing, the T40. I mean, we're on kind of not great terrain, and we're still able to go, move around at 40 odd kilometers an hour, which is fairly respectable. It's not the fastest machine in the world, but neither is it the slowest. And Loki racks up her second kill, taking out the enemy DW2. And letting the team know there's a light tank in J6 somewhere. Hopefully this T28 is going to pop his nose around the corner, because then I can promptly remove his nose from the rest of him. Like that. And that's my first kill. And only my second, certainly my second damaging shot. I think it's only my second shot of the game. No, third, I put one shot into a tank, but into the Valentine, but someone killed it just before my shot landed. And there's a Panzer 1C. And the Panzer 1C has spotted Loki. Thing is, machine gun at long range, not particularly brilliant, has some shots at me, but generally speaking bounces, and I take it out in 2 shots for kill number 2. Loki has relocated because, that spot seems to be a little bit flawed. We're 2 tanks behind, and it's just a pair of us and an LTP. Now I can't complain too much because, if I'm honest, I haven't actually done a fantastic amount this game so far. I've just been lacking people to shoot at. Anyway, I decide to return to the other side of the map. And Loki's saying wait for them to come on. They outnumber us, so they're probably going to attack. The fact that our team is made up of an artillery, a tank destroyer, and a lower tier light tank means that we are, and the enemy team has 3 tank destroyers, an artillery, and a light tank, means that both teams are stronger on the defense than they are on the offense. Mainly due to the tank destroyers. And so this means that you are, generally speaking, better off waiting for them to come to you. Now Loki takes a position up in A6. If any of the enemy team had actually been driving around there, we'd have already seen them by now. They'd have come down and tried to kill us. The fact that they haven't seems to indicate that both teams pretty much ignored that northern sector of the map. And Loki is coming around to join me in defending the base. Our LTP is very, very forward. I'm not quite sure why it's so forward. And T82, bad shot, difficult. That one misses. I'm just waiting to see if that T82 reappears. It does. A little bit further on than I was expecting. But I don't have a shot. That LTP moves around. But he's he's far too far out. Gonna get himself killed. Oh, there's another tank destroyer over there that's outside of my render range too. Loki attacks the other one, the Su-85B, but is unable to take it out. And I'm telling Loki to reposition a little bit further back. I have the better armor of the two. I appreciate my armor isn't amazing, but I have the better armor of the two of us, and I have the better health. And I've got binos, so I can do some spotting, and hello, Valentine. Shot misses. Shot misses, and you can see the gun is not especially accurate. They're the American 76mm guns for you. Leave the Valentine on 8 health, and take it out. T-82's coming up now. I have to be very careful because I've probably been spotted, and they also have an M37 artillery piece. There's their Su-85. Now I need to move forward. The Su-85 doesn't have a shot on me at the moment. I need to move forward and take out this T-82 before it does something horrible to our artillery, i.e. Loki. Successfully do that, then put a shot in this Su-85. I can take one shot from him, but Loki finishes it off. And a near miss from their artillery takes off a chunk of my health and tracks me. We're currently sitting on a brothers in arms, which is quite nice. And their artillery tries again, but by that point I've repaired my track and moved. Now the LTP is saying that the M8A1 is camping. Alright, fair enough. I tell them, are they scared yet? And the LTP says he will not attack, so just gonna skip ahead a little bit. We've decided to move up. The LTP says he thinks he is here. Basically, that's the standard camping ridge on the other side of the map. Again, I'm just gonna skip this along a little bit. So we're both moving up to try and assault their base. Now, Loki is staying a little bit further back to try and get shots on them, and I'm moving forward to try and light up the enemy, basically. In a bit, I'm going to make a pretty bad mistake, unfortunately. But I'll mention that when we get to it. So, I'm using this low terrain to hide myself from the enemy campers, hopefully, as I move forward. Come round the corner, and there's their artillery. I put a shot into him. The artillery puts a shot into me. I finish him off. Now, I should have driven forward at that point, and that's the mistake I make. If I drive forward, I can stay underneath the M8A1's gun. But I'm trying to not be spotted anymore. As it is, I don't do that, and the M8A1 kills me. And at that point, I'm afraid to say, I lose us the game. Now, there's a bit of a conflict here, I guess. I would like Loki to move forward and just try and derp this guy in the face. Some of the other teammates would quite like to not give the guy the satisfaction of a draw, because all he's been doing is camping all game. I can see his point. Anyway, long story short, this game is a draw. Oh, sorry, not give him the satisfaction of a win for camping all game. This is a draw, but hopefully you got to see that we did fairly respectably. I mean, this is not a frontline brawler, but we did pretty respectably. In a tier 4 game, you can inflict a lot of damage and rack up the kills. The T40 is a very good machine. So now let's flip it over to a tier 6 game and see what happens. Here's game number 2. You can see that we are bottom tier, so tier 4 tank destroyer, tier 6 game. And there's a good respectable number of tier 6s, about a third of each team. We are here on Murovanka. Of course, the Magic Forest. How could I possibly forget? And it's a standard game. Now, I could go over to the Magic Forest, but I despise the Magic Forest, so I am not going over to the Magic Forest. One thing if I haven't already pointed it out, is that the T40 carries quite a respectable amount of ammunition, which is good. In fact, I think it actually carries more ammunition than its successor, the Wolverine. And that's good, because it really... the accuracy is a bit dodgy. So there we go. Anyway, I'm going over onto this other side of the map, try and take up the back tank destroyer spot, although it looks like this Hellcat is trying to do something similar, and see what we can achieve. Now there is a light tank rushing toward us. Hello, Mr. BT7. You are dead. Congratulations, you win the suicide lottery. I mean, yeah, sure. Scout. Firstly, you shouldn't be in this game. You've platooned up with someone stupid. Secondly, okay, yeah, scout. Cool, fine. That's not scouting. That's driving into the enemy and dying. Pointlessly. Basically. Anyway. I'm sitting here in my bush. And, yeah, I'm just going to see what crops up. Stug. Hello, Mr. Stug. Stug is not having a good day. And I get my first kill. Booyah! Ooh, ELC AMX just nukes our T28. Hang on, there's an ELC in this match. Huh. Good matchmaking for the ELC, and their KV-1S kills their own Wolverine. I'm not gonna lie, I assume it was an accident, but that's a little bit odd. Never mind. Anyone else gonna come up this flank? I mean, most of our team has gone through the Magic Forest, but they appear to be making it through the Magic Forest. So, whatever. Hello, Mr. BDR.
Penetration.
You're also having a bad day, aren't you?
Enemy is hit.
Probably 2 more shots to kill him.
Enemy armor is hit.
And someone else finishes him off. Fine. Just working these guys over. Anyone else gonna come down here? So far you've seen a Stug and a BDR get evaporated. Anyone else want to try their luck? I very much doubt it, so I'm just kind of moving up here to try and get some shots toward the centre of the map and the Magic Forest. I think I've outlived my usefulness back in the spot that I originally chose. Ooh, Dickomax. No, he's dead. And, oh, he's dead too. KV-1S. Hello, Mr. KV-1S.
Enemy armor is
Damage, tracked, and I'm going to have me some blind shots. I think he was about there, so I have another one. Flat Panzer has...
Enemy armor is destroyed.
I must have set the KV-1S on fire. Oh, that's brilliant. Anyway, BDR. Ah. Looks like we might have tracked him, not sure. Or we could have just missed him. I think it might have been someone else that tracked him. Anyway, we're winning reasonably convincingly. 12-8. There's only 3 of them left. ELC, I kill. Now, I've got 1 tier 6 kill. If I can get a second tier 6 kill, I think that's Hannah Lukin's medal or something, which I've never had before. Oh, VK. That's for killing tanks 2 tiers higher than yourself in a tank destroyer. And I'm going to open up on this VK and try and get it.
Enemy armor is damaged. Enemy is hit.
Come on. Hopefully no one else kills it instead. Oh, 39 health. He's mine. Oh, what? The gun missed. damn it, and someone else kills him. No fancy medal for me. Ah well. But you can see, whilst the gun is not very accurate, the gun on this tank is good enough to be a bit of a pain to people in a tier 6 match. So this is a very, very good tank destroyer. Let's go back to the garage. So, what do I think of this thing? It's a very, very, very good machine. Some would argue it's too good. Perhaps it needs a nerf. Perhaps it does. I don't know. But it is very good. Am I going to keep it? No. Why? Well, this is exactly the same argument you'd have heard me trot out every time I do a tier 4 tank destroyer review. I have my tier 4 tank destroyer of choice. It's the Electo. I have a lot of fun in it. I haven't yet played a tier 4 tank destroyer that gives me more pleasure, so I don't see any reason to keep any of them. But this is an excellent machine. It's definitely in competition for the best tank destroyer at tier 4, and that's a stiff competition to be in the race for. You may well really enjoy it, and I do recommend it, and it will certainly not be a painful experience. One thing I would like to note, with regard to the tech tree, there are 2 American tank destroyer lines, and you often hear a lot of which tank destroyer line should I go down. Basically, this bottom one, T40, Wolverine, Jackson, etc., is generally speaking the non-turreted one, and this top one is the turreted one. That doesn't mean you always get a fully traversable turret, but you generally get a turret of some description. Now, if you compare these 2 lines, what you tend to find is that the non-turreted line gets the more powerful gun, the better gun, and sometimes, often the better armor. The turreted line tends to get, well, a turret, obviously, and sometimes more mobility, although not always. I mean, the T30 is more mobile than the T95, the E4 is more mobile than the E3, the Hellcat is more mobile than the Jackson, the T49 more mobile than the Wolverine, and the M8 more mobile than the T40. But if you want, you can, if you go down this one, the non-turreted line, then the Wolverine actually splits off to both the Hellcat and the Jackson. So you can open them both up from the Wolverine. You don't actually have to play the M8A1 or the T49. Having said that, they are both very good machines. So if you choose to play them as well as I have, you're certainly not going to regret that decision, I don't think. So, there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed my wee little review of the T40. Possibly even found it informative. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel. And I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.